Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla coming back to ya with a surprise episode of Walks with Schla. Due to good weather, we are finally back. We're finally back, and yeah, I haven't checked the weather, so I don't really know, but I do think that for the rest of today, I'll actually be able to do an additional walk switch law. And then after that, I'll be able to do. I don't know what I'm talking about. um, I never set up the iPhone SE, which I was going to do and I will do. So yeah, I should figure that out because I literally got the iPhone SE third gen specifically to do this, and we gotta at least try it. I'm pretty sure I would just stick with that. But anyways, kind of what's been on my mind and kind of been pressing me is that whole thing about you'll own nothing and be happy, and a lot of these, like, I don't know, these topics surrounding ownership and private property, and I talk about the abolishment of private property likely being a step in the right direction. But I'm not gonna. I don't know. I came out with all that information. It was a while back. I assume it was around the time of car rides with Schla. If like no, no, sorry, walks with Schla. Like when walks with Schla was starting, we were talking about that because I was getting into these like advanced ideas about how, you know, a lot of times property and ownership, like, it just doesn't really make that much sense. Like it really, because and again, I used to be someone who railed against that stuff, and I thought that freedom and personal property and all these things were important, and I still believe that. I mean, to some extent, but as I'm going to get into and explain, I'm really starting to be able to realize and kind of reiterate further, I think, why the elites come to the conclusion that they do, about private property and just the nature of it and the whole own nothing and be happy thing. And I've talked about this before. I've definitely talked about it before. But we're going to start off with this notion about the nature of humans and a very common thing that we see, and it's how terrible people take care of things. If you look at like the average person, they take extremely poor care of the things that they own anyway. I mean, you give, and it actually kind of goes back to my like original thoughts and theories about things, because that was kind of one of my culminating ideas, was like the 1900s really were an experiment of like, let's actually give humans a lot of wealth. Let's give the masses tons of wealth and opportunity and see what they do with it. And they did that, and they saw what happened, and it wasn't particularly good in an objective sense. Now, in a, just person to person sense, I think it was probably fine. Like things were relatively fine. But in terms of like where we got ethically or morally or even productively, in terms of any real progress towards a future, not much had really occurred, in the 1900s, as it just, I don't know. I mean, people emotionally kind of got what they want, but it led to a lot of waste, a lot of material waste, a lot of property waste, which is kind of what I'm coming here to talk about. Is most people are terrible. They're horrible at not only managing their own body, not exercising very well, not taking care of themselves. I mean, even when I'm saying this stuff, I'm not talking down to anybody, because even in my own case, for most of my life, I hated lifting weights. I was never even going to. Now, I've accepted it's something I need to do, but I still haven't been doing it. So, there's really, it's a problem. You know what I mean? But I often blame that on like where I came from, the way I was raised and all that kind of stuff. But I guess it is my fault, that I'm not really getting it in gear. But needless to say, there's a lot of things to take care of in this life that we've been incarnate into. There's a lot of self-care, and I don't really think anybody is particularly good at it, especially in this day and age. I think it was probably a little bit better in the past, but we're reaching this point now where as humans, we just end up making like the wrong choices. Like, we make judgment calls that just don't make any sense, like not brushing our teeth for 5 minutes. So for what? So we can spend another 5 minutes playing a video game? You see what I'm saying? And that was kind of me. Like, I hated brushing my teeth, and I had terrible oral hygiene my whole life. Well, particularly once I became a teenager. And I did end up getting 2 cavities as a result of that, but they were extremely minor. But, I mean, it's really a gift how good my teeth were. Because, I mean, if I was just like... my teeth are obviously pretty impeccable, because I'm sure if I had just brushed my teeth every day, that wouldn't have never even happened. But anyways, I was in a rut, and I was in a bad place, and I didn't brush my teeth. And that happened. And it kind of points to what this point I'm trying. I know it's been 7 minutes. I know I'm not really getting to it, but it's basically that even without our private property, so even if, assuming I didn't own anything and I just had myself to look at and take care of, I think I'd be better than a lot of people. I don't really think anybody can like perfectly take care of themselves. I think it's almost like outside of our scope, which is pretty crazy to think about. Like, if you think about, like, this is what I mean by take care of yourself. It's like, eat the right food, not the food that you want for taste, but the food that your body needs nutritionally. You know what I'm saying? Not what you want for taste, but what you need to eat. What you need to eat to be healthy. That would be check number 1, obviously. It would be not only exercising, but exercising in the right way. Dedicating a pretty significant amount of time to walking every day. Dedicating some time to stretching, taking part in certain routines that you probably would have like a resistance to. For example, taking vitamins, something that is kind of like hard for me to ever do. I wanted to try to get into taking vitamins, but I always just end up losing interest in doing. Like, I just don't like it, and that sets me back, or it sets me behind. In more extreme circumstances, if I needed meds, and I'm sure plenty of people who listen to the show would say, put this boy on meds, you know what I'm saying? But I'm saying if I actually got diagnosed and it was like, oh, this boy needs medication, I would have a problem taking it, not really because of not only because I'm like a little bit apprehensive to do that, but it's because the routine of like taking the pill, it's just not, I know it's something that just wouldn't last, right? That's just the truth. It just wouldn't last. I would probably just stop doing it, because that's just a flaw with me, or it could have been not a flaw in a different situation. But anyways, my point is, we're horrible at taking care of ourselves, especially in the modern age. Even though we have better tools than ever, potentially, because, we have technology, we have all kinds of bio-tracking things that you can, for extremely affordable prices, see your heart rates, track your sleep, do all kinds of stuff. The potential is through the roof, but do any of us actually use this tech to improve our lives? Not really. It is probably in the single-digit percentages of people who actually use technology to wholeheartedly improve their life. Now, it may improve their life in ways, for example, it entertains them, and that's technically an improvement in their life, but what I mean is, like an actual improvement of their life, meaning, it's not entertainment, it's not just like, oh, I had a bad day, and fortunately, because of technology, I can listen to music easier and cope with that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who clearly use technology. They clearly use AI as tools to better themselves. And I've started to do that, and I'm the only person I know who does. So there, what I'm like, that's what I'm trying to get to is like, I've tried so hard and I'm still not really that great at it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not perfect. I've still spent way more money on things that I probably shouldn't have. Right. And I think a lot of people have that struggle. It's not just me, but that's like the whole point. I've tried to walk a straight line. I've tried more than I think anybody I know in an abstract sense to like try to do the right thing, try to learn right from wrong, really try to sift through different biases about what you should or shouldn't do, trying to keep an open mind because, sometimes you get told stuff and it's kind of like misinformation. And, I'm really the only person I know who's done it with the depth and to the degree that I have, and I still can visibly see it falls short. It's not, there's certainly things that I miss. There's certainly some things that I still end up getting incorrect because that's just a human thing, and that's what's scary to me is seeing that limitation and seeing how all that effort, all that trying, and it still doesn't amount to much. And this includes my taking care of my physical possessions, which as hard as I've tried, and as much as I'm better than most people, I've still lost pretty expensive things before. And it's crazy, but it's happened to me, and it's some of my most aggravating and upsetting moments in my life because of how high of a standard I have for myself. Like, I do take really good care of my things. I truly do. And most of my things, which I have a lot of things, I have a lot of valuable possessions. I have more what I guess you could consider valuables than basically anybody my age that I know. I don't know. A lot of people don't really have that much stuff, but I try to take care of things, but there's certain ways I'm not really good at taking care of stuff. And there's still times I feel like I have certain things and they kind of get neglected. They don't really get paid that much attention to. And you think about that and it's really kind of impossible, I guess, to give all your possessions like an adequate amount of attention to actually justify purchasing them. I think that's kind of a flaw with the material world. It's probably why monks and stuff, they're free, because they're trying to focus intention inward, and it's spiritually freeing in that sense. Because you think about it, like all the stuff that we have, all the stuff that we do, we can't even keep up with it. You can't remember what you ate for dinner last night. So how are you supposed to be grateful for that? How are you supposed to actually be grateful and see that as a good thing if you can't even remember what you ate? You see what I'm trying to say? Like, this is an important conversation. This is like the whole point, is that when left to our own freedom and devices, it's very easy to just get swept into this addiction of Novelty, where it's like now you have to eat a different meal every day because you get bored of food, you get tired of food, you get bored or tired of a certain taste. These things that are incredibly spoiled and, should be invalid, and yet they're made to be valid through a modern society because of how spoiled everybody else is. And then it allows you to fit in, so then it doesn't really appear as spoiled because everybody else agrees with and validates. But obviously, objectively speaking, no, like it's not valid to just get tired of food because there's people dying from food. You really should just be eating, but there's like pretty broad swaths of people, I may even say a majority of the population, that would be miserable if they had to eat the same thing every day. They would lose their minds. They would become sick of it. And I think that really says a lot about how terrible the human condition is, because some people may have to do that, depending on where you're at, poverty wise. But once people get used to something, they just can't get enough of it. So I didn't even end up getting to really what I wanted to get to. It's gonna have to be in the next episode, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I mean, in short, what I guess what I want to talk about in the next episode is how all this correlates and connects to, this is why I think the elites justify this whole abolition of private property, and how it kind of seems like it makes sense given the human condition. It's like we cannot really take care of ourselves, let alone any of our possessions, like our cars, like our homes. I mean, people are a mess, So it does kind of seem like a superior future, or a step in the right direction, to restrict people's autonomy and restrict people's ability to have ownership, and instead only have ownership and private property as privileges that maybe some people can do, or have an AI kind of like in its superior way with much less effort be able to kind of calculate and take care of the private ownership thing in a much better format. And this is all true stuff. I mean, GPT, I know GPT's going to argue. I know they're going to argue with me, but, ultimately at the end of the day, I know I'm right. And that's, I mean, really, as time goes on, this is going to become more and more apparent. If it's going to be the end of the world, and we have to like get in line and figure things out, it's going to happen. We're going to have to delegate the usage of resources to few, a few people who really have a care and respect for things and want to manage resources in an efficient way that isn't wasteful. And the masses, maybe they just shouldn't be given that much stuff, or shouldn't really have that freedom until we can rebuild a new set of masses that actually will. This is the morally correct outcome at this point, I believe. And I know it's radical, and I know it has some problems, it has some issues, but what can you do? What I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I don't see another choice for humanity. We have the data. We see how people abuse their cars and how morally reprehensible that is, but we justify it for the sake of freedom, and it's keeping us trapped. It's keeping us stuck, and time's running out. Costs are climbing. They're skyrocketing, and we're going to have a lot of problems as a result of this very soon. And again, people will criticize me, GPT will criticize me, but when it hits the fan, people are they're gonna be putting up these systems fast, because again, it's getting dire out here. So again, I want to kind of elaborate on it more, but I guess I felt like that preface was necessary. So Anyways, it has been schla, and now it's time to buy schla. So, see ya schla.